So raise your hands if you have come across a question. So probably if you have been ever confused about where to start with DevOps, I think that's probably most of the people will be asking the same question. And then if you think DevOps is just about tools and technologies, because there are like a lot of tools, but that's the fear to come into the market of DevOps, because nobody has the capacity to learn all the tools at once. And also, if you have ever learned Kubernetes and Docker, the first thing which you can learn as an advice. Most of the people will say that if you know this, then you are a DevOps engineer, and so on. So we can deep dive. So probably these are the questions. Probably I can take that at the end. If you have any questions at the end, you can raise it, or you can interrupt in the middle. So let me tell you, DevOps is not just about tools. Even I have started with the career, and that time when I was looking at not GPT at that time, and then when I was looking in Google, and it was giving a lot, 15 stream of tools, which contains Vagrant to the cloud technologies and so many. So then I didn't know where to start with. So it was actually a confusion for me. Then let me tell you that probably will be having the same concern for everyone now. So it's not just about tools. It's actually a culture, which means I have featured it now. So since I am in development procedure with a developer, and I know what the culture is, I can explain you when I'm showing the demo. And it is also all about principles. So we'll be having a principle to keep, then we'll be having a pipeline to set, a streamline to perform. So that makes the DevOps a powerful one. But instead of technologies, you don't have to go after a technology, but instead you have to keep these principles and the foundational IT knowledge. So, which means you are working with IT, so you have to understand how the systems are connected and how it interacts. So that's where the real problem lies, not just about technology. So probably you can go to GPT and write a code, but in DevOps you cannot do that, because you need to understand how the tools are interacting together. So probably if you can write a web page in Angular, so you can go to ChatGPT and you will get the right exact one. If you give a prompt, then exactly they will write you the exact prompt, and you can copy paste. So that's why developers are suffering now, because the job is at stake now, just because it is a repetitive task and anyone can eliminate it. So, but our foundational IT knowledge is very important, because it is actually the structure of a computer, and how it interacts and how it communicates with the nearby technologies or devices. It is actually the problem. ChatGPT or any other GPT cannot make it, because it is a business logic, and business logics cannot be replaced. So there are like some misconceptions about DevOps, or probably this is not just about DevOps, but probably this is all about when coming into a new technology or learning practice. For example, if you are students in this country, probably you are also facing the same thing. You don't have to, you can adopt it. So you can parameterize these things, and you can take it away for your lessons too. Because learning tools first mentality is actually the problem. Where the problem comes in, so it is giving someone a race car before they know how to drive. Actually, that's the problem. So you start doing something, you start reading a blog, and you start doing things, and you know that it works, because if you're following a top to bottom approach from a blog, they will clearly say that what you will face and what you will not. So you can clearly follow the steps and you will get the answer. But the problem really relies when you have a problem. So actually, when the system will not work as you expected, then the real problem lies there, because you don't know how to troubleshoot it. And you only know about the technologies and tools, and you don't know what is behind the scenes. You don't know how it interacts. So you'll crash before you even starting the line. So you will probably start it, but you don't know how to scale it. You don't know how to make it perform well. You don't know how to make it available, and you don't know how to secure them. So the typical roadmap fail. So jumping straight into tools without understanding the underlying, so the same. So you are fixing some furnitures which know how to use a screwdriver. So you might get it done, but you don't know why it works. So that's the actual problem. So learning tools and then coming into this and you don't know where to fix, then you will be in trouble and you will not. So I think a friend of mine who is working in a web development project, and he was integrating an API server with a database. He was working there for 3 days, continuously, and he was mad at, and he was trying to give up, and the productivity was decreasing because the product is not releasing. So the real problem was the database will be having rows and columns, so they will be having fields. So, but we are not passing the exact fields what is in the database, which means the API server is connecting to the database on a wrong table or wrong fields, which will give an error that it is not matching with the real database fields. So he don't know how to fix it, or he don't know where it comes from, because he is not a database manager. So then he came to me and he approached me. We sit together and we fixed it in 5 minutes, just because we know the tools and technologies. So he was doing it by reading a blog. He was just trying to integrate it, and he was sending some API request or API JSON payload into the database, but it was not working because it was not actually serving the right amount of parameters. So that's actually the problem. So the roadmap will fail. You will spend a lot of time there, and you will be giving up, and you will fail back. So tools are transient, which means it is actually not a long-running thing. So if you think about Tesla now, so it is outnumbering any other automobile industry, or BYD now. So which means new technologies will come and the old technologies will go. So which means if you rely on the tools, learn tools first mentality, then you will fail in the third step, because these tools will go in some day. For example, a decade ago when I was starting, it was actually DevOps tools were like Chef and Puppet. Those were like the configuration management tools. But nowadays it is replaced with the Terraform, Argo CD, and Ansible. Now nobody is requiring for a Chef and Puppet. Yeah, it is no longer required. Now projects is recommending, and I'm working with Accenture for 7 years and never used these tools in my career. But Ansible is widely used. Probably that will replace too. But what I'm telling you is I'm only taking the key principle behind the technology, how it works, and what is behind the scenes. That matters. So the Chef and Puppet, yeah. Okay. So the Chef and Puppet were like it is actually complicated to build, because it is the principle behind the scene is push versus pull method, which means the Chef and Puppet were like pull method, which means you make a configuration change. The Chef and Puppet agents will take the change from the server, and then if there is any change detected, then it will deploy. But whereas in Ansible, it is a push-based configuration, which means whenever you are ready, whenever you make a change, then you can push it, which means it is up to you whether to take or not. But these are too complicated, because you have to manage the agents. You have to manage a server client configuration, which is really complex. Probably if one of them, so monitoring, you have to do the monitoring, because you have to make sure the agents are running all the time. If there is any downtime, you have to fix it. So it is a complex one. But Ansible is agentless. It is disintegrated. You are ready and you can push it. So that's the difference. I will show you the Ansible configuration in a moment. So the tools evolve, but the core concepts like automation, observability, infrastructure, it remains same, which means the underlying architecture. So Alan was discussing about the Jenkins CI/CD pipelines, but I'm not using the Jenkins CI/CD. I'm using the GitHub Action, which is free, and I have a quota limit now. But what is actually behind the scene is how the CI/CD pipelines works. I can show you. So similarly, so I know the foundational principle of every CI/CD pipelines, because it is backing with a container technology. I know how containers are working and how much time it will take to deploy. I know that. So, but relying on a name or a technology or tool which is transient, which is not. I have never used Jenkins in my projects. We were used to. Now we are using GitLab. Previously I was using Concourse, then AWS CI/CD, Azure DevOps, but no Jenkins in my project ever. I didn't use it. So relying on the technology will make you fail, because you will be relying, and you go to the next company and you say, I know Jenkins, and they will not take it because they don't need Jenkins. So you have to say this way, I know the CI/CD pipeline, so I know the integrations work. I know how the deployment works. So that matters, not just about the tool name. So you have to write down what are the. So underlying is the container technology. So thereby you understand the containers too. So the fundamentals build adaptability to learn any tools faster. So if you know the core concepts, it is very easy. Then the shortcut becomes the roadblock. So the beginner's principle is to follow some blocks. So deploying a Kubernetes cluster is very easy. If you go to ChatGPT and ask, they will give you real steps to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. What are the requirements? What are the prerequisites? It will clearly mention it. But when so you make a Kubernetes deployed, and the Kubernetes is running for an year, and after a year, probably something happened. The pod crashes. For example, the atomic one, the pod crashes and you don't know why. Probably the pod crashes and you don't know the pod has crashed. All it matters is the clients started complaining, saying that the application is not working. For example, the Facebook is not working, which means you don't know where the actual problem comes in. So that you have to start from basics. So you have to make sure the physical connection is working. Then you have to make sure the networking is working. And at the end, on top of this, a seventh layer is the application layer. And the application layer, within the application layer, the pod is residing, which means you have to go from bottom to the top to find a problem. And you have deployed it by using a blog or ChatGPT, and you don't know where the problem lies. It will take months. You can't even imagine. If you are fixing by yourself, then it will be a problem. So that's why in corporate companies, they recommend to come into the Scrum meeting. So every day they'll be having a daily Scrum, and then we will be discussing all the things, bottlenecks will be in the meetings. Probably someone who knows that or someone expertise will be able to give you guidance. Then they will guide you what to do. Probably they will come and sit in a call, and probably you will fix it in very, in less time. So what is actually DevOps? I know that the previous session was already discussed, but we'll check the use cases of it and what actually, why we need it in this era. So as I said, it is a culture of collaboration. So which means previously when I was starting in 2014, it was actually not even cloud. We were working in on-prem servers. Like we have a physical machine, air conditioned, and then we have to make the racks upgrade. Disk we have to change when it is corrupted. We have to use the RAID technologies to integrate all the, just like our Google Drives nowadays works as a RAID technology, like collection of disks. So now we have moved to DevOps. So even though nowadays the cloud migration happened, but still there is a gap in between developers and operations. So developers only knows what to build. They know how the buttons works, how the website looks better, and how the API is connected. That's all. They doesn't know anything, and they will be working on their local system, which means they are not accessible to public. So which means it is a private network, and they don't know how it performs in public domain. So this integration then comes to the operations part. The operations are responsible for performance, availability, patching and security, high availability, disaster management. These are coming into the ops part, and also the seamless integration between developer and operation. For example, if you have a new feature comes to WhatsApp or Facebook, and you can see that immediately, right away. So whenever they have a new feature released, they will deploy it right away. They will not wait for months or days to deploy it. They will be doing it right away, and then it is seamless because there is no human interaction there, and humans are making errors, and here the machines are automated, and it will not cause an error. So now I recently went to Airbus factory, and they were describing something like a fly-by-wire, which means the airplanes no longer require a pilot, which is actually causing most of the accidents. Air accidents are mostly caused by the human errors. So they are avoiding by making the new Airbus, making it as actually a fly-by-wire. So which means the instructions are set by the computer and sent to all the equipments within the aircraft through the signals. Which means the humans are just there to monitor it, that's all. So the computer system will take care of everything. So which means like that, if you set a pipeline, when we have a product ready and when we have a pipeline which is error free, then it will run as long as you want. So it will not cause any error because there is no interaction. So that's why the culture comes with the automation. So when you have a repetitive task which is actually taking your time and making some human error involved, then you have to automate it. So that's where the automation comes. We will not automate it first. We will do everything manually. Then we will find where the time is actually taking, and then we will identify what we can do and what we can parameterize. So thereby, we will ask the user to supply some parameters, and then it will automate. No, sorry. So just like the Netflix, I think the Netflix is the best DevOps team ever deployed. So the business survival depends on speed, quality, and resilience. Of course, if you have a product and you have to, I'm developing a project for over a year and a half, and still the development phase is not yet done. Just because the developers are very adamant that they will not follow any DevOps best practices. So thereby, they will tell a story and they have a failure, they will not discuss it. And they will not discuss, and they will not come to a daily scrum and discuss it. So it is almost 1.5 hours, and still the product is not. It is actually a web project. I can release it in 7 days, and they are taking 1.5 years to complete it. Not a productive. Which means the business is demanding something which you have to deploy it now. So if you have a product to sell now, you have to sell it now. You cannot sell it later. So which means the speed is a problem. So time matters, the quality matters, and resilience. So if you watch a Netflix movie, for example, if a new series is releasing and worldwide, and the people are demanding for that, and you expect some low speed, which is actually killing. So which means Netflix is losing the customers now. So thereby they have to create the CDNs, the cloud data, what is that? CDN. So the data delivery networks, which means they'll be having edge locations. So now we are watching some movies from India or from Europe or from America. So the movies will be aggregated based on the user's demand. So they will be taken into the nearest locations, probably here in Frankfurt or in Stockholm. So they have data centers there. So which means from the USA, the movie is taken into the data center in Stockholm or Frankfurt. It will be kept there for a 2 weeks time. Probably based on the data analytics, they say, okay, the people are watching for the first 2 weeks, and then the people decreases, and probably they can cache it for 2 weeks. Then which means the cached content for the 2 weeks will be delivered from the Stockholm networks, which means very closest to Latvia. So which means you don't have a latency to go to America to find the data and bring it back. So which means you'll be having a data delay. If you don't have a strong network, then you will be having buffering. So which means you will be having some not feeling good watching movie with that buffering. So which means you have to service. So Netflix do that by creating CDN networks around the globe. So they'll be having a real quality of network delivered, and the payloads will be delivered to customers without a delay. So the Amazon also do the same. So they have different things, e-commerce sites and so on. So they do the same practice. Anyhow, the Amazon is working on top of AWS, which means they are easy. So they can even customize for their products how the product has works. So the example of Amazon. So Amazon has started, AWS has started in 2006, and now it is actually a growing one. And the Microsoft also adopted the same way. But Amazon has the more number of products and services. So when I'm taking the time from my time, it was on-prem, and we were completely doing that ourselves. So we install a Linux machine, we install all the packages inside, and then we will make it connect. So now Amazon is doing the same thing. I mean, they are taking the open source project, then they are making their own. So they are naming it by their name, and then they are hiding everything, so abstracting everything inside, and we are only getting to see the web interface, which means we can only parameterize it, then it will deploy it on a hypervisor. So here, the agile focuses on interactive. So all I have to say is that DevOps is an agile methodology, which means agile in the sense you are fast. So fast in the sense you are going fast to the market, you are doing something fast. So agile is something, DevOps is using the agile methodology to do things, which means it will be having iterative development, which means you build a product now, you release to market, and you ask for the feedback for the customers, whether it is good or not. So that's why if you log into Amazon Web Services and you get a new UI, then the first thing they will ask you whether you like the UI or not. Then customers will give the poll. Then they will say that, okay, I don't like it, and I need to go back to the previous UI. Then they will go back. Then they have an option now to switch. For those who like to go to the new UI, you can toggle the button. Otherwise, you can keep in the same one. So which means iteratively asking the feedback of the customers, taking monitoring tools to feedback, look for the resource utilization, the resource consumption of the applications, and then they are coming back to make the product optimized, and they are finding where the resources completely utilized, then they will decouple it. So they have different technologies and tools and technologies. So that's why the business logics cannot be replaced with any other GPT solutions, because it is the core and it is actually coming from a human being. That's the actual thing. So DevOps extends to iterative delivery and operations. So when Agile focuses on iterative development, but here we are saying that we need a continuous thing, continuous delivery, continuous monitoring, continuous integrations, and continuous deployment. So that's why DevOps is actually an agile concept. So the both emphasizes on feedback loops, automation, and breaking silos. So that's the common the method of agile and DevOps. So they are in the common place to sit together. So that's the connection to agile. So you can interrupt me if there is any queries or concerns, or to object me. So if you're starting in DevOps, the first thing you have to understand is the principles are more than tools. As I mentioned, you only focus on the principles. Don't look for the project or tools, because in DevOps, as I said in Accenture Bootcamp, they are only teaching 15 tools, but that's not the thing. If you look into the tools, then probably there are 1,500 tools out in the market, which is widely used in major companies. For example, if I'm using CI/CD pipelines, there are like 10 more competitors in the market. For example, in languages, more than 5,000 languages in the market. You can use anything, but based on your use case, you are selecting one. So which means don't focus on tools, because it will, someday it will go off, but the principle stays there. The CI/CD integrations, the infrastructure as a code, which means you're building an infrastructure from a code, and observability, which means monitoring, but only after mastering the why. So I will show you what I'm doing now, and when we are going to integrate everything at once. So we are not building all at once and automating it. It is not a good practice, which means it will break. Because if you start doing now and automate it, but you don't know where it happens, it is actually a problem. You have to do and go and manually check it. And you have to make the configurations looks nicer. Wait a second, I will. So we will get to know what we are doing and how it works. What you have to do in a streamlined position to make it work. The foundational IT knowledge is a must thing, which means you have to understand how the integrations and how the machines are working together. So that will make the concept more robust, because you understand where the problem lies and you can troubleshoot it easily. So the core IT skills are very essential here. So if I'm saying Linux, it is actually the common one now, because most of the servers are running on Linux. Windows is also there, but I'm not using that for a long run. Linux, it is completely free and open source, and it has more number of applications available from the package repository. The second thing is networking. Networking is very essential now, because networking has now the things are running in cloud, so you don't have a physical server to connect to. So which means you have to make sure the connection is working, and also the application connection between VPCs, between the subnets. So at least the concept you have to understand where the problem lies in. Then you can go to the ChatGPT and ask, this is not working, but it will give you guidance where to check. Then the security, because we have to make sure the isolation and the code is all isolated, and also the applications are isolated from each other. For example, database is not exposed to the public domain because it is only accessible from the application server. So we have to understand how the integrations works. Then we have to code it. At the end, we have to code how to know, how to understand how to code, how to write a better code, how to code neatly to look nice. Then I recommend to learn the OSI layer first, because that's where the actual concept lies in. In OSI layer, then you have a physical layer, which is actually your laptop or any other hardware which you are using, a camera device or something. Then you have the data link layer, which means it makes you connect to the local network or LAN area. It will be having a MAC address, which is connected to the Ethernet port. And then third one is your network layer. This is where the actual IP addresses comes in. So which means when you're going to a different home, then you have to have an address. So similarly, you have an IP address will be here allocated, and then you will be assigned. So all the traffic will be communicated with the IP address in the third layer. So that's why we are saying some routers is actually a layer 3 router, which means it can act as a local area network, also act as a router, which means route the traffic outside the network. Then the fourth one is transport layer, which means how the packets are transformed through the internet, whether you have to make sure the connection, actually the packet has delivered or it has been dissipated. For example, if you're watching a movie, not now in television time, or if you're making a phone call, if you're using a wrong transport protocol, if you're using a TCP for that telephone conversation, then you will see echoes because it will retransmit the data which was already not sent. So the UDP, the unigram datagram protocol, it actually makes sure that the package will be sent, but it will make sure that the receiver has received it or not. So when you're developing an application, you have to make sure which protocol you have to use. So emails are using TCP because you have to make sure the recipient has received the data. But in televisions and phones and DNS servers, they are not using TCP protocol, because the data is not valuable and you can retransmit the data whenever you're needed. So similarly, by using the which protocol, it can be identified by using the port numbers. So the port numbers of a certain series is used for reserved for TCP protocols, and the below ones are like for UDP protocols. So by using HTTP is using 480, and HTTPS is using 443. So it's kind of like you will be having a port number to listen to. So not just IP address, you will be having a socket, kind of like an IP address and a port number. So address and a door to enter. So that's actually the socket configuration. Then the session layer will make sure that your sessions will be created in between the client and server. So you have to understand, whenever you are communicating, whenever you're working, you have to understand there is a client and server configuration will be there, which means the client is asking for something and the server is serving something. For example, a browser is a client. Browser asks for request for HTTP, HTML pages, and the server somewhere which is running on Nginx or Apache is serving the content back. And also the same email, you will be having an Outlook client, and then you will be having a server SMTP at the back end, WhatsApp client and WhatsApp server, Facebook client and Facebook server. So which you have to understand, there is a client server configuration is always in between. So whatever you're using, it's not actually the logic. It is actually just a UI. The actual business logic is behind the scenes. For example, if you're using Instagram, you click a like button and then it hits a transaction to the backend server.